And what is going on, everyone? And welcome to another special edition of Houston Texans football on the Bleacher Report Network, on the new Bleacher Report app. I am one part of your show, Ruben Calvillo. You can find me on YouTube at 713 Houston Sportcast, dropping daily Texans content. My co host, Harley Dugan, Texans, Rockets, Astros at TheLead_Houston. How's it going?
Doing all right, man. I'm having a blast. We had Nick Casario talk. We had
Mm-hmm.
a few stuff coming from the Texans with two guys that are going to be meeting with the Texans as well. So yeah, man, there's a little bit more to talk about today.
Yeah, we are 8 days away from the NFL draft. Harley will have you covered night one. Whenever the Houston Texans are done making moves, he will immediately go live on the Bleacher Report app. I tomorrow will be representing the Houston Texans in the Bleacher Report Creator mock draft. So I will be joined by the 31 other content creators, and we get to do a group mock draft. Hopefully, I represent the Houston Texans very well. Harley, today, I think we should do a 3 round mock draft. But first, man, we want to shout out Big Support allowing us to come on here. Always a big shout out to the man upstairs. And did you find anything interesting from the Nick Casario press conference today?
I mean, he doesn't give out a lot.
Never does, huh?
Um, to me, the best thing was that he dropped the f bomb in his.
Right?
Yeah, man, he dropped the f bomb, called some people out. That we're always going to criticize him anyway. That was fun. Definitely, I thought a great question from him was from Landry Locker talking about uh, Nick Cayley and his relationship with Nick Casario and how's he going to utilize some of the guys that they currently have, like Christian Kirk specifically. Thought that was a hell of a question from Landry Locker. Nick Casario gave himself a really good answer regarding that situation. And I mean, other than that, there's just not a lot to pull from. Nick mentioned that the various mock drafts we look at, some of them, sure, they get some of their sources directly from the team, agents, whatnot. But at the end of the day, like nobody knows what the Texans are going to be picking. Nobody, and many of the leaks that have came out, like I would say, there's little truth to them. At the end of the day, it's unfortunate. We love to, hypothesize as fans who they're going to pick, but ultimately, man, being at 25, not being in that top 5, top 10, you're just not going to figure out what this Texans team's going to be able to do at draft day.
And that's where I give credit to general manager Nick Casario because, the regime before, during the Bill O'Brien era,
Oh
you were
man.
having rumors coming out left and right, and you didn't know what to believe. And it felt like every different day there was something new coming out about what was going on inside the locker room. And it has been everything but that as Nick Casario is now the GM. And it comes to the point where when we hear a rumor, the first thing we see, does it come from Diana Rossini? Diana Rossini is really plugged in with this Houston Texans team. If it doesn't come from her, a lot of people don't believe it. So shout out to General Manager Nick Casario for playing this one close to the chest, which is why, Harley, I mean, we've seen a defensive tackle, a wide receiver, a tight end, an offensive lineman drafted to the Houston Texans at 25. I saw someone today say that the Texans were interested in the possibility of selecting Amarian Hampton, running back out of North Carolina, at pick 25. I think that would shock everyone if the Houston Texans went RB in the first.
Completely shocked actually.
Completely.
I I wouldn't do it.
Mm.
The running back class is so deep. Like I know Marion Hampton, look, I might be mad initially, but it could be that situation where you get mad initially, but 2 to 3 years down the road, you're ecstatic that Marion Hampton is your RB1. But initially, I'll stick with it. I wouldn't be very happy that they took a running back at 25. There's numerous running backs in this draft class, extremely deep.
Mm.
But it wouldn't also shock me considering we got the quote from Nick Casario saying that they draft for need. And that's what they or no, they don't draft for need. Excuse me, they draft best player available.
Hmm.
And so I mean, running back as deep as it is, if a Marion Hampton is there at 25, you definitely are going to have a conversation, whether it's him. I would even have a conversation about Trevion Henderson.
Mm.
He's a very solid running back as well. Maybe not as much chatter as a Marion Hampton would. But man, I mean, that's a Texans fans would definitely be like upset. And the national media, they're going to make fun of you because you drafted a running back and they're going to say, oh my God, they drafted a running back, but they don't have no offensive line for him to run behind. That would be the running joke after day one of the NFL draft.
It almost makes me want to do a mock draft where we take Amari and Hampton at pick 25 and still rebuild the Houston Texan offensive line. Well, Harley, I think we could do a mock draft right now, and let me tell you who's available at pick 25 for you. And your general manager, Nick Casario. Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. Luther Burden, wide receiver out of Missouri. This one's going to be tough because you have Josh Simmons and Kelvin Banks Jr. available to you. You also have Amari and Hampton, who we just talked about, and someone who you are very high on, Colston Loveland.
Oh my goodness.
You have a tough choice,
My
Harley.
goodness. Oh
Pick
my goodness.
25. And here's the thing we talked about, we've mock drafted a different position at 25. Hey, we're talking about a wide receiver, a tackle, a running back, a tight end.
Yeah, my goodness. That is extremely tough because Colston Loveland would, I mean, that brings another element to the offense. You can have a legitimate tight end, but ultimately you'd have to try to move on from Dalton Schultz. And in that case, teams are going to know you're wanting them to get rid of Schultz. And you could get him pennies to the dollar. Not that he has a lot of value per se, but I'm gonna stay away from Loveland in this case.
I know that hurts you.
It does hurt. Marion Hampton, again, the chatter has to be there, but the one name that immediately perks the ears, and it should perk the ears for every Texans fan, is Kelvin Banks. If he's there at 25, every national media analyst, scout analyst, they're experts per se, the in quotes, the talking heads, like everyone has been pounding the table that the Houston Texans will pick Kelvin Banks if he's available at 25. And in some of these cases, they have it where we even trade
Straight up.
up
Yep.
to go get Kelvin Banks. So to me, it's too much of the Venn diagram of need versus best player available. And then there's that interlapping. And that interlap is the best player available and a need, and that to me would be Kelvin Banks for the Texans.
Banks, a 5-star recruit, started at left tackle for Texas since his true freshman season. He is on the smaller side, 6'5" for NFL tackle. His arm length is in the strength evident in how he leans into contact and onto his heels at time. Long defensive linemen can easily get their hands inside and pull him to the side or push moves. That's why a lot of people consider him to be a guard in this league, Harley. And the conversation around Kelvin Banks is, do you want a pretty good left tackle or a really good left guard? And I think that's the conversation you have to have with Kelvin Banks.
Yeah, and I mean Kelvin Banks was damn good at tackle for the University of Texas. And I mean that's where I would see him fit. Who knows at the beginning of this career, maybe he starts at guard, who knows, but ultimately this Texans team could have found themselves their left tackle of the future with Kelvin Banks. I'd rather him play at tackle, and I think he has a great opportunity to beat out the starter for either left or right tackle, whether that's Cam Robinson, Titus Howard, Blake Fisher, whoever. He's in direct competition.
Mm, I would agree with you. I wouldn't mind Kelvin Banks Jr. at all. It would be hard for me to say, Harley, like, don't start him week one because of
Yeah.
how well he's played so far. at Texas, and we think he could be really bright in his career. But I can also understand, like you said, they move him to guard early in his career. The
Maybe.
five best offensive linemen need to be out there. You would think that Kelvin Banks Jr. is one of the five best. So hey, wouldn't mind that. I would say A plus. And one that moved, I said, yep, you had to do it. You had to do it. Round two. Here are the names that stand out. Benjamin Morrison, cornerback
Mm,
out of Notre Dame.
mm,
Cam Scatterbo, Dylan Sampson, running back out of Tennessee. Elijah Arroyo. Now, here's where it gets hard. Andrew Mukuba, safety
mhm.
out of Texas. And then check out the wide receivers, Harley. Jalen Royals, Kyle Williams, Trey Harris. Quinshon Junkins is also available to you at 58. This one's very tough, Harley. Um, if you're asking me, I am leaning more towards Trey Harris, wide receiver.
Yeah, the Texans did have a meet with him. Um, you know, he's on Steve Smith's top 5 big board of wide receivers. I believe he's at 5, I
Mm.
want to say, or 6. I could be wrong there, but I know he's in that top 10. Um, he talks extremely high of Jalen Royals out of Utah State.
Mm.
Again, though, until the Texans prove that they are going to draft a non-power 5 guy, because he's coming out of the FCS at Utah State, like, I'm just not, I got to see it to believe it. I would lean Trey Harris here too. I mean, great size. He's fluid, solid route runner. Hands are amazing. He can make tough catches as well. His stats are sure a little over exaggerated being in that Ole Miss offense, but he didn't even play a full season. He was
No.
hurt at some point and still had over 1,000 yards receiving. So Trey Harris can do it, man. He's a weapon that Nick Caley is going to get excited about.
1,030 yards and 7 touchdowns, 17.2 yards per reception, which is absolutely ridiculous. And here's the thing, Nico Collins is so good as he is entering his prime. They're going to have to start double teaming him. You're thinking about Trey Harris and Christian Kirk opposite. They got to win their one-on-ones. And, when you talk about an offense that likes to push the ball down the field, the Texans the past 2 seasons have done that. Now we don't know how
Mm,
it's going to be with this new Nick Caley offense, but you would expect with the speed of Nico and the size and speed of Trey Harris also that has to excite you. But Harris projects as an alluring wide receiver 3 type for an offense that likes to push the ball down the field. His route tree and separation rates leave something to be desired, but he can keep a defense honest with his field stretching ability. I still think he is learning the wide receiver position also. I'm taking Trey Harris, Hardy. So Kelvin Banks round 1, Trey Harris round 2. How are you feeling so far?
I'm loving this draft so far, right? You got yourself an offensive lineman who can immediately be a starter at whatever position you want him to,
Mhm.
preferred tackle, but who knows? And then you get Trey Harris, who is going to be in direct competition with everyone else to be the wide receiver too, should end up winning that battle. Very talented.
No, yes, I do agree. And as we move into the third round, remember the Houston Texans have 2 selections, pick 79 and pick 89. The guys who are available to us. Well, hey, Jalen Royals, wide receiver out of Utah State, is there. There is still Andrew Mukuba, safety out of Texas. Tate Ratledge, guard out of Georgia. Mason Taylor, tight end out of LSU. Terrence Ferguson, tight end out of Oregon. Hey, Jonah Savanea,
Mm.
tackle slash guard out of Arizona. Harley, where are you going?
We're at 79, and I think it's worth taking the risk to see if one of these guards are available at 89.
Okay.
I'm going Mason Taylor there, man. I
Talk to
am.
me.
Get myself a tight end, a guy that has we've talked about him numerous times on here. The Hall of Fame bloodlines. Everyone else is super high on him. Todd McShay is extremely high on Mason Taylor. Calls him a pro's pro and seems to be NFL ready which is not shocking at all considering he is the son of Jason Taylor. So he knows the ropes, he knows everything that comes with it. All it is just his ability, and his ability speaks for itself. Solid blocker, really good catcher, a pretty balanced tight end when it comes to it. And then you figure out what to do at the tight end position. Who cares? It's a good problem to have. You put him in there. Who knows what happens with Dalton Schultz? Who knows what happens with Brevin Jordan and Cade Stover? But as far as we know, Stover has missed some games last year. Brevin Jordan has had some injuries here and there. The only one that's been a workhorse for you is Dalton Schultz, but he hasn't produced for you specifically last year. 2 years ago, you're hoping you get some of that from him. But if you don't, you feel comfortable handing that starter role to Mason Taylor quite easily.
Yeah, and Mason Taylor here, the profile. Taylor is young and could still be growing into his talent and, more importantly, his strength. In his current form, he is a tight end 2/3 candidate, more of a move tight end detached from the line of scrimmage as a receiver. But if he gets stronger, he can be a more versatile and a consistent contributor. His best work comes as a receiver. He is smoother than he is explosive and twitchy out of his stance. They do say he needs to work on, his route running and stuff like that, but only
Mm-hmm.
20 years old, not even 21 yet, hardly.
Yeah.
Mason Taylor, I love the fact that, his father is a Hall of Famer. He knows what
Mm-hmm.
it takes to be a pro. He knows the grind of the NFL. So this should be nothing new to Mason, and it would not surprise me if he starts performing, and performing effectively sooner rather than later. Because, like you said, with Brevin Jordan, we don't know.
Mm-mm.
With Dalton Schultz, we don't know. You think at least with Cade Stover, also given the fact that he is CJ Stroud's boy, he has, a longer leash than the other two. Mason Taylor, it would not surprise me if he does end up as a tight end 2, tight end 3 this season for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Would not shock anybody. Wouldn't shock a lot of the national media scouts that have been talking about him too. Again, super fluid. Would love this.
So Kelvin Banks Jr. round 1, Trey Harris wide receiver round 2, Mason Taylor tight end round 3. I would say you have at least 2 day 1 starters, and you have one where you think in maybe 2 to 3 years is your starting tight end and your tight end of the future. Now round 3, Harley. Let's look at the guards.
Mm-hmm.
Tate Ratledge out of Georgia is available. Jared Wilson, center out of Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
is available. Jonas Savanea, tackle out of Arizona, is available. Wyatt Millum,
Mm-hmm.
tackle out of West Virginia, is available. Charles Grant from William and Mary, who the Houston Texans had a
Yeah.
meeting with, is available. You have to go offensive line here. You have to.
Yeah, I would love for them to double dip within the first 4 picks. I don't mind that. Um, man, I'm gonna go with what Jordan Reed told me, and he feels like Jonas Savanea is a guy that fits exactly what D'Amico Ryans is talking about when he described offensive linemen with grit, the toughness, the leadership, finishing. And Jonas Savanea, look, I know Tate Ratledge is there too. Uh, Savanea does have that flexibility as well to play tackle. And the Texans love that. And Savanea is also tackle guard combo, but for the majority of his career at Arizona, he played guard and he was damn good at it. I expect him to stick at guard, and the Texans should be ecstatic to have themselves 2 guys on the offensive line that immediately solve and your offensive line's problems for the future. Both guys have tremendous upside, and both of them, they represent exactly what the Texans want to do on the offensive side of the ball with the swarm mentality.
And you get you a Samoan on the offensive line. You need at least one Samoan. But here's the thing: Jonas Savanea has already let teams know that he wants to be a guard in this league. And when you think about the Texans putting together the 5 best linemen on the field, well, you have to think Titus Howard is moved at left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Kelvin Banks Jr. is your left guard. Juice Scruggs is your center. Jonas Savanea is your right guard, and Blake Fisher is your right tackle, I would feel, I mean, I would feel two times better than what I felt now about the offensive line.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. This O line that's currently constructed, look, we know it ain't the greatest. It's
No.
being held up with some thumbtacks and bubble gum right now, and it ain't pretty. You're trying to make it put that lipstick on a pig kind of analogy here, and the Texans have an opportunity to attack the offensive line with the first four picks,
Hmm.
and two of them being those two offensive linemen right there. And then you match that up with a Mason Taylor and a Trey Harris who can make some plays for you offensively. You went all offense in this draft, but I don't mind this at all.
No, I don't mind at all. Imagine if they would have took Tate Rallage. If we would have took Tate Rallage at 79, it's Kelvin Banks, Tate Rallage, and Jonas Savanea. Your
Right.
offensive lineman of the future. I mean, that wouldn't shock me at all either. If they went offensive line heavy, and I mean heavy.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't shock me at all either. It's the Houston Oilers uh, plan right there. The
Mm.
Houston Oilers basically took all of their offensive linemen in the same year, and they all ended up being Pro Bowlers for them. One of them a Hall of Famer in
Hey,
in Bruce Matthews. So I mean, him, Dean Steinkühler, and the coach. I can't think of the former coach's name that we've been. He was a former coach for the Titans. That's gonna slip
Mike
my head.
Munchak.
There we go, Mike Munchak. Oh my goodness. There we go.
You want to see what PFF gave us as a grade?
What you got?
Kelvin Banks Jr., an A.
Okay.
Trey Harris, wide receiver, a B minus.
Okay. Okay.
Mason Taylor, a B. And Jonah Savanea, an A minus.
Okay.
Round that up, we got a
That's about
B
fair.
plus. We're in the top 32%
That's about
of
fair.
mock draft for the Houston Texans. I mean, hey, I would say you got at least three day one starters in Kelvin Banks Jr., Trey Harris, and Junior Savanea. All of these boys should be starting next season.
Yeah. Yeah. At some point, too. Like maybe there's an argument that, Savanea isn't ready day one, but at some point during the season,
He hops
he's
in.
got to take it over, and you got to figure it out. The Texans got to figure out offensive line. And so, yeah, I don't mind that. It's a solid grade for the draft for the Texans. I'd be ecstatic if that's what we got.
Dude, that would be I mean, that's kind of good, Harley. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Going into day three, and those are your guys with no fourth round pick. Let's say you say you just stay pat, no trades, and you got no fourth round pick, and you're pretty much chilling, waiting for the fifth round pick with those four. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yesterday I did a mock draft for the round table, and
Uh-huh.
I ended up with um Josh Simmons at 25,
Okay.
Trey Harris at 58.
Okay.
I went with Tate Ratledge at 79 and still took Jonas Savanea. So kind of the same thing, except I went 3-0 linemen. So not mad at that whatsoever.
One of them got a hit.
And one of them got to hit. And that's the thing. Like, you look at Nick Casario's resume. His first draft, Nico Collins, hit. Davis Mills, you could say it was a hit. Brevin Jordan,
Still playing.
you could say it was a hit, right? Derek Stingley, home run. Kenyon Green, right?
Not so much.
You also got Jalen Petrie, a hit.
Yeah.
Um, and then CJ Stroud hit, Will Anderson Jr. hit, Tank Dell Jr. I will say a hit for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say a hit for right now. Last year, Kamari Lassiter hit, Kalen
Oof.
Bullock hit,
Oof.
Blake Fisher. Maybe we're
Yeah.
on the verge of becoming a hit. We're at a bunt right now,
Yeah.
right? And the
Maybe.
pitchers, and the
We're at a
catchers,
3-2 full count.
we're at a 3-2 full count. We're waiting to see where he's at. But if Kelvin Banks hits, you got your left tackle of the future. if Trey Harris hits, you got your wide receiver two of the future. If Mason Taylor hits, you got your tight end one of the future. And if Jonah hits, you got your right guard. I mean, dude, like you need them to hit. That's the thing. That's why I'm talking like this. I 100% know that not every draft pick is going to work for the Houston Texans. Hey, which is
Yeah.
why we talk about Kenyon Green. But the Texans need this to happen because they put themselves in this situation. If you need two tackles to work in this draft, because if CJ Stroud goes from the second most sacked quarterback to, let's say, the fifth and sixth, that's still not an improvement, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, that's just a strong man argument, and I'll give you that one just to stop talking to you. Okay, if you're gonna say the O line improved, but he sacked just six less times, but still 40 plus, what are we doing here? So that's what I think, Harley. Like we need these guys to hit.
You do. We've seen the success in terms of offensive line for Nick Casario. It ain't the greatest when you look at his draft history. I mean, you see Kenyon Green, Austin Deculus, Juice Scruggs, Jarrett Patterson, Blake Fisher, Ladarius Henderson. I can argue that Jarrett Patterson, a 6th round pick, is the best pick from all of them guys so far. And that's
Yeah.
saying a lot, considering that one, two, three out of the 6 guys that I mentioned were all 2nd rounder picks or higher.
Mm.
So there is concern when it comes to the offensive line evaluations for not just Nick Casario, but the rest of the front office and the staff for the scouting department here with Houston. I
And
got
then,
to
like, go ahead.
Well, I was going to change topics, so go ahead and finish.
I was just gonna say, and then why I'm also concerned is, um, Cole Popovich,
Mm.
he didn't go anywhere. He just got a promotion. So moving on.
Yeah. We'll see how much that's an effect at the end of this whenever we get to the season going and stuff. ESPN Plus, man, real quick. They had themselves a little bit of a they had a bomb of a draft. It was between Mel Kiper and Field Yates, excuse me. And Field Yates made the pick for the Houston Texans at 25, and it was a surprise fall of a wide receiver. I want to know your reaction real quick. The Houston Texans at 25 pick Tetaroa McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona. The wait ends for McMillan. He's not blazing fast, but he wins with excellent catch radius, strong hands, good routes. Texans must hit receiver and O-line hard in the draft. And I like the fit of McMillan joining Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, and eventually Tank Dell.
So
Now,
we're talking about the arguably the one or two what
yeah,
prospect falling to 25.
exactly.
Did you have a reason why Tet fell to 25?
That was his only description right there of when it came to him. I wish they would have said something as to why they think he's falling. But I mean,
Would you
I'm not
trade up
quite
for
sure.
Tet?
I'm sorry.
Would you trade up for Tet?
If he starts falling, there is definitely some chatter that I would go, okay, you know what, guys, there is a legitimate conversation. And here, remember what Nick Casario said today? Like, just because, yeah, he's going to take a look at Travis Hunter. Now, he knows that Travis Hunter might not be available for the Texans, but you never know. And he made a similar comp to Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks was somebody that wasn't supposed to fall to the Patriots, wasn't supposed to be there, and he ended up falling just enough to where they made a trade up and grabbed Brandon Cooks. He ended up going to the Saints, but he had an idea of drafting
Mhm.
Brandon Cooks. Didn't quite happen. He had the idea of trading up for him though, because he's starting to slip. If McMillan starts to slip, Nick Casario can be like, hey, you know what, guys? I'm gonna get myself a big time wide receiver here and pair him up with Nico Collins and Kirk.
You're talking about Nico and I mean, a lot of people compare Tet to an AJ Green, a Mike Williams, guys who are
Okay.
6'4" and can just win by the sheer size of them. And that would Magic Mindset trade for Garrett Wilson. No, I think he is staying
Sorry, bud.
in New York, and welcome to the show. Um, dude, that would excite me. I would not be upset if you went and trade up for him. But you got a potential, a potential superstar there at a wide receiver, at a wide receiver 2 spot.
Arguably the best wide receiver falls to you at 25. Shouldn't even take a second off the clock. You run to the podium.
Mm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is all for today. We will be back Friday as we just get days and days closer to the NFL draft. That is Harley. I am Ruben. For more Houston Texans content, just come back on Friday. Go Houston. Shout out to Magic Mike. Have a very blessed day.